If you think Blue Ant refers to your Aunt Betty, who lives in Los Angeles and voted for Kamala Harris, have we got a TV industry update for you? One of the top execs at Canada's Blue Ant Media is with us next at Brio TV, the podcast. Well, if you work in television, you know how hard it is to keep ahead of an industry that always seems to be pivoting. Streaming, fast channels, multi-platform media brands. Who can keep up? Well, one fellow who can is Jamie Schouela, President, Global Channels and Media at Blue Ant Media. I caught up with Jamie a few weeks ago in Toronto when I was asked to moderate a CTAM panel on the future of the industry from a cable perspective. Blue Ant, of course, it's not just about cable channels. Jamie leads the strategic direction and operations for the company's streaming and linear networks, as well as digital, print, and consumer event properties. Just to make that job a little harder, a lot of this work is basically taking Jamie all around the world. The company's linear and streaming networks include Love Nature, BBC Earth, BBC First, BBC One, BBC Two, wasn't this Austin? And anyway, T&E, Makeful, HauntTV, Cottage Life, Crime Time, Homeful, Love, Pets, and many, many more. There are also the fast channels, I think 8 of them, that Blue Ant just launched recently in the United States alone. He's also very busy doing deals with YouTube, Prime Video channels, Apple TV Plus, Roku, Samsung, Pluto TV, and others, just to keep the Blue Ant content in front of as many consumers as possible. So did I feel a little stupid when I botched the first 5 minutes of our interview by not being able to sync picture and sound on our internet call connection? That would be yes. But thank goodness, Jamie was as gracious as when I used to speak with him in our previous lives, me at the Toronto Sun and he at Can West. So here he is, one of the good guys, Jamie Schouela. Yeah. Jamie, I'm sorry this has been such a halting beginning, but great to see you again.
It's great to see you too.
We had fun at the CTAM conference a few weeks ago there. That was cool. Yes. But I certainly learned a lot. And I wanted to follow up, so thank you for being available today.
You're welcome. There's lots to talk about, and love reminiscing as well. We've known each other for a while now.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we'll get into that. But let's get right into Blue Ant Media, because it's a fascinating world that you can bring me up to date on. And let's just tell people that you're the President Global Channels and Media at Blue Ant Media, right?
Yeah, it's a long title, but that's all correct.
Okay,
Yes.
well, that's the main thing. Yeah, but you have quite a job there. Blue Ant, of course, been around, I think, since 2011, 2012, right?
Right, that's correct. We were founded in 2012. Our assets and parts of the company are older, but that's exactly right in terms of 2012.
Yeah. And it's very much a company that has, proof that television is a borderless business now, that you have assets in Canada, of course, but your job is takes you around the world selling content and making deals for platforms. And it's quite a fascinating, very modern story. So congratulations. How long have you been there now, Jamie?
I have been there 11 years, believe it or not. So
that's fantastic. Yeah, seen a lot of changes. It's fascinating to me, all the acquisitions that go into it. But let's talk a bit about that. Well, even before that, let's talk about what brought you to Blue Ant, because we've known each other since Can West, certainly. Sure. And even before that, you were involved with Shaw, I believe, right?
No, actually, I was Alliance before I was Alliance Atlantis. So if you want me to go back to my early days, so I started at what was then Alliance Broadcasting, and we had 2 channels. We had Showcase and History Television. Those were our 2 channels way back when in the late 90s. And when I got there, I started in sort of an entry-level job. I mean, Bill, you know me, and we met mostly as my marketing background. I was a marketer 20 plus years at various places. And so my first job was kind of an entry-level role that was a little bit marketing, a little bit viewer relations. So I was on the front lines in the late 90s when Showcase had some fairly provocative programming on the dial.
Yeah.
And I was the person getting the then phone calls and emails for some of the more provocative stuff that Showcase. So that's some stories in itself. And then I also actually, ironically, this was, the early website days, late 90s. And so I was the first ever online employee of Alliance Atlantis Broadcasting. And so my job was to update the Showcase website and the history website. I would HTML code the schedules and all the things that were on there. And that was also part of my very early job.
Well, those were exciting times to be there because those two channels were massive hits in Canada, Showtime and History, of course. And what were some of the more provocative shows on show? I'm sure I wrote about them, but
for sure. So, we used to have shows like Kink and Red Shoe Diaries,
right,
and a lot of provocative movies and a bunch of stuff. So there was some edgy stuff. But then we also launched the Trailer Park Boys in 2000, I think it was. And so I was part of sort of, those early days of building that brand, working with the boys. We did multiple seasons of that show, as you know. And so we sort of watched those guys go to a cultural phenomenon from these three unknown characters in season one to then being, Canadian and international superstars. We kind of saw that rise, and that was a really fun thing to do in those early days.
Yeah, sure was. I got to go to close to Halifax it was the other across the not in Halifax, but I remember going on to the location with them and getting a ride with Bubbles, and I think Mike Clattenburg was the executive producer. He took me for a ride in the, excuse the expression, the shitmobile, which pretty exciting.
That was the official name, I think, at the time. Yeah, and we shot multiple seasons. It's funny because, you probably remember this, but that show was not a hit out of the gate. And season one, it did okay. It did well enough that we decided to do a season two. And by the way, I credit Laura Michael Chishin and Phyllis Yaffe, who was the head of broadcasting. But Laura specifically, shepherded that show, worked with Mike Clattenburg and Mike Volpe, who were the producers. She saw something in those characters and thought they'd break through. So we did a couple seasons, and it was a success, but not a breakout, I would say. And then between season 2 and 3, I remember this very well. They were asked to go on tour with Our Lady Peace, the Canadian band.
Yeah.
And they did a cross-country tour. And I remember when we did that, we were thinking, is anyone going to know who these guys are? Like they were brought out on the stage and they were introduced. And the beauty of that show was that from day one, they did their marketing in character. So when they talked to you and they talked to other journalists and they appeared anywhere, they weren't the actors. They were Ricky, Julian, and Pulse, as you know. That was part of the importance, that they looked like they're real. Yeah. And so we did the Our Lady Peace tour, and I remember they went on stage. They were called out halfway through, and people brought them out, and the crowd went crazy. Like, just they were the biggest hit of the show. I think was these three guys coming out, and it's to us. It said, "Wow, there's something here. We got to kind of keep going here." And so we did a much larger marketing campaign going into season 3, and it just sort of took off from there. They became that phenomenon that they became, but it was a very fun ride watching that with them.
Absolutely. They were Letterkenny before Letterkenny, right? I mean, it was the performance aspect of it, and the rock stars. Who is that guy, Bach? I remember they had a following of guys who would tour and play. They all were so into the Trailer Park Boys. They would watch it on their tour buses, right?
They were such a phenomenon. And it's funny. I remember like one day as they were exploding, it got to the point where they were walking down the street. We were walking, I don't know, somewhere with them on Bloor Street. And I just, like, people would honk their horns, and the courier guys would shout, "Hey, Ricky, hey, Julian." Like, people just loved seeing them anywhere. So it was really fun to watch that thing. So that was part of my time at Alliance Atlantis. And I should say Alliance became Alliance Atlantis under the CEO of Mike McMillan, who is my current and it was my boss way back when and is my direct boss now here at Blue End. We can talk about Mike, I'm sure, if you want to. But
for sure, Jamie. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was going to say, so I ended up spending 7 years at Alliance Atlantis working on A whole bunch of brands there worked on Showcase, History. We brought Food Network to Canada. In 2001, we launched a whole bunch of what was called the digital specialties, kind of way back then.
Yeah.
And that was in one day, we launched channels like National Geographic Channel, the BBC channels, Showcase spinoffs. If you remember channels like Showcase Action and Showcase Diva that ended up getting rebranded to other stuff.
Yeah.
I was there through all that amazing rise and ride of the growth of those cable channels.
You really were there at the right place at the right time, weren't you? If you look back in terms of what you do now, because you were in the formative years of everything exploding and going, the landscape broadening. And so it must have been very valuable to you now to have had that experience, right?
100%. And, so much of those channels were about speaking to niches, speaking to very focused audiences, right? And that principle is still something that's what the Blue Ant brands today are. And you mentioned they're international, and we could talk more about them eventually. Yeah. But ultimately that theory of, understanding who your audience is, not trying to be all things to all people, but really leaning into niches and connecting with niche audiences. That's something that I learned early days, and that's carried with us and in theory for sure.
You mentioned Michael McMillan, who, famously owned half of CSI franchise, the biggest show in the world, and sold it at the exact right time. Made $2.3 billion, right? Something like that.
Something like that. Right.
You must see him, and I don't throw this word around loosely, but he is one of the TV visionaries, isn't he?
100% he is. He's been in this industry. He is a stalwart of this industry. And, seeing what he built, multiple times now, but seeing what he built over 25 years at Atlantis and then Alliance Atlantis. And you're right, Mike sold the company in 2007. In the last couple of years, CSI was the gift that kept on giving for sure, because it was that, right place, right time when Mike and Alliance Atlantis involved with it and co-produced it. And then obviously CSI spun off CSI New York and CSI Miami and franchises and board games and so many things that kind of created at the time. So that was a huge bit of jet engine for sure in that business toward the end.
Yeah, no, that franchise was an oil well, right? It was just, one of those great shows that you don't see that kind of return really anymore in terms of syndication and things, but it really was there at the end of that as a great show.
That's right. And, in my path, funny because, I said that I was at Alliance Atlantis for 7 years. I left Alliance in 2005, which was, to go to CanWest. And that's maybe where you and I met in my earlier days. And of course, it was CanWest that bought Alliance Atlantis 2 years later. So I had already made the leap. I had gone from the specialty side to the conventional side in 2005 and started working on global in 2005, probably in early days. Both entertainment, primetime, and news. And then, of course, 2 years later, my new company bought my old company. So I was back working with some of the same colleagues that I'd worked with in my many years at Alliance Atlantis, which was a fun come about at that point. Yeah,
no, it's you've had these experiences on different platforms at different times that brought it all together for you, I'm sure. Now, and I'm just curious about what. You're at Global, and we can talk a bit about Global today. My God, it's people are watching it. They love the channel, but Chorus is in some trouble financially with their debt load. Now you're at a business where you guys are making acquisitions. Do you look closely at situations like Chorus and think there might be opportunities? I mean, we're just speculating. Who knows what's going to happen there? But certainly, that's a developing story. What do you see in terms of what's there and what might be a future for how that business is run now?
Well, again, I'm obviously not inside it. So here's my thinking, which is I think there's a long future for that business. I think you're right to say they have a debt problem. That's the obvious sort of statement. Right. So, how that plays out, do they restructure the debt? Do parts of the business get sold? Does someone, there's been rumors of Quebecor and others looking at the whole business. That's all rumor right now, as far as I know. So, who knows exactly which of those roads will play out, but I do believe there's a lot of value in that business still, and a lot of great assets and a lot of great talent, and it's still a very profitable business. It generates a ton of cash still on a quarterly and ongoing basis. So, and you said there's global as a big, broad, mainstream conventional platform. There's great cable assets. There's a whole bunch of value in that business. So, I think and hope it has a long future. Its form may change, I guess, over time. But I do believe there's lots of great equity there still.
Yeah, no doubt. Back in a moment with Blue Ant Media President Jamie Schouela. Well, as some of you know, I've been collecting 16mm film for many years and sharing them recently with audiences at the Westdale Theatre in Hamilton, Ontario. The next TV on Film party screening is a Christmas-themed one, and it's happening Saturday, December 21st, starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when I'll be showing 5 classic animated shorts, 2 from the 1930s and 1 each from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The standout might be the one from 1939. It was nominated for both an Oscar and a Nobel Peace Prize, and we have a beautiful print. Stick around after the shorts, as the Westdale is also showing a 20th anniversary screening of the Polar Express, featuring the voice of Tom Hanks. In between, we'll award some cool Christmas-themed prizes for answering cartoon trivia questions, courtesy the folks at Retro Festive. For tickets and information, go to thewestdale.ca. Hope to see you there. Well, it's the most wonderful time of the year. We're back with Emily Gagne. Emily, what do you got here? You got a great deal for us for this Christmas, right?
Yes, I've got some sweet treats for movie lovers.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Hollywood Suite is on free preview from December 1st to January 5th. And that means if you have cable in Canada, you most likely can watch Hollywood Suite, all 4 of our channels, plus our on-demand selection for free.
That's like getting hundreds of Christmas presents, right? You got so many great movies coming up.
Exactly. And, sometimes you just want to kick back after a crazy family dinner, or maybe a crazy night on New Year's, and just watch a marathon of your favorite movies. We've got all the Christmas classics like Love Actually, The Holiday, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But also we have Paddington, which I think is one of the best movies ever.
There you go. Britain's favorite bear. Listen, Emily, have a great Christmas yourself. Thank you very much for all the update on Hollywood Suite.
Thanks, Bill.
And here he is again, Jamie Schouela. Talk a bit about Blue Ant's properties that Canadians would be the most familiar with, the different platforms. As you say, there's some niche channels, T and E, obviously, but many others. Which are the ones that thrive most for you now?
Yeah, so we have, it's funny, you mentioned how much the business has changed in my 11 years here. That's totally true, because when I got here, we were a small Canadian broadcaster. That's kind of what we were known for and where the core of the business was. And so based on that, we had, which we have today, 7 cable channels. And so these are fairly niche channels. They're probably, from a distribution point of view, considered kind of mid-sized to smaller in terms of they don't have the distribution of an HGTV or a Food or a Discovery that would have had more wide distribution historically. But they're in a fair amount of, they're distributed nationally, and they live in a couple of key areas. So you're right to say they're niche. And so we tend to have a couple of lifestyle-based channels. We have a channel called Cottage Life. Yeah. Cottage Life as a channel, obviously, is a 360 brand for us. It came from a 30-year-old magazine that we acquired about 10 years ago. Yeah. That magazine had spun off a live events business, which we call our consumer show business, which is a real world. We go to convention centers, we sell booths to exhibitors, and we charge entrance to attendees. And that's another totally different part of that business, but it's part of the Cottage Life flywheel. And then about 10 years ago, we launched a Cottage Life cable channel, and that has a range of lifestyle, home, extreme weather, a bunch of different content on there that's been part of that channel. We have another lifestyle channel called Makeful, which is more of a DIY broad lifestyle channel as well. And then we have a number of factual documentary-based channels. And so one of them, and we've talked about Love Nature, which is really a homegrown brand that we create a slate of original content, and it's our most international channel, so we can go back to that sort of separately. But also here, we've had longstanding partnerships with both the BBC. So we have a BBC Earth branded channel, which basically gets all their awesome natural history that they have produced every year. We have that exclusively here, both as a linear and an SVOD channel on Amazon and other platforms like that. We have another BBC branded channel called BBC First that we picked up a couple of years ago, and that is more comedy and drama direct from the UK. And then we also have a long-standing channel partnership with what is now Paramount on the Smithsonian channel. So we were the first non-US Smithsonian channel, again, going back about 10 years. And that has everything you would expect in terms of history content, science content, aerial content, really great stuff we get from that output out of the US, and it's done very well for us. So that's kind of a broad sketch. And it's funny, you mentioned T&E. T&E is kind of the monkey in the middle, I guess. That's probably our broadest, most general entertainment channel, but it really focuses on a very clear niche, which is ghost and paranormal content. Wow. Of which there's a rabid fan base for paranormal content, but both here in Canada and around the world. And so that is one that we've been building that audience for years now as well.
That's wonderful. Now, Cottage Life is one I'm most familiar with. I've gone to those shows at the International Center twice a year. It's as a cottager, as somebody whose family's had one up the Bruce Peninsula for many years, and the magazine, everything. It's the most integrated product you guys have, I guess. And is it valued because is the niche ad market there just more robust perhaps than in other places? Is it just well targeted in terms of that potential?
That's true. I mean, it lives in a category by itself in that, we kind of own the lane of cottaging and cottager, certainly in Ontario and as a national base as well. And ultimately, that's a very specific audience. It's also a pretty affluent audience. Most cottagers own 2 homes, and therefore they need 2 of everything. They need 2 fridges, a lot of furniture, a whole bunch of things to kind of fill those 2 places. Yeah. And so it creates a very specific market, and we're able, as you said, it really is a 360 brand for us. So we're able to sell people packages that are the magazine, the digital base we have. We have a strong digital publishing business. The channel obviously have exhibitors appear at the show. So we really try to bundle that together as much as possible.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I like to attend those shows. They're always fun. You mentioned BBC Earth. I understand Elon Musk has already nailed down rights to BBC Mars.
Has he taken that?
That one's gotten away from you guys. I just love that title, BBC Earth, better than BBC Worldwide even, right? It's something about that title is very evocative. It's fun.
Yeah, and it speaks directly to the natural history base, the planet Earth, and all the amazing franchises and the David Attenborough stuff, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Speaking of Earth, you guys are all over it. That's the other part of your business that fascinates me. When I was writing for the Toronto Sun and later even for Canadian Press, I got to go to MIPCOM a few times over in France, and that's the big marketplace internationally. In October, they set up their pavilion. It's hard to even explain. It's just a crazy convergence of all media in one little place, surrounded by yachts. and is it you obviously would have booths there and be very much involved in those events. Is it still a big deal, Jamie? Is there other markets that have taken over, or how is that evolving?
There certainly are other markets and other important, meeting spots over the course of the year, but it is the big daddy, I would say still, and it is the place where you get real good international, because there's markets like, Prime Time, which gets the kind of Canadian producers here, but it's more of a Canadian thing. Or there's NatP or Real Screen, which is mostly North America. They have some international attendance, but it's more of a North American type market. But MIP is global, and you get buyers and sellers and channels and every kind of platform really coming to one place. The backdrop doesn't hurt, so there's never a bad reason to go to con, I guess, to your point. But it really is still kind of that big October show was really a collection. And so for us, because you mentioned sort of our evolution, I'll talk about the channels, which I sort of live in a bit more, but, we've grown a lot the last couple of years as a producer of content. And we do that a lot with many broadcasters and streamers, as a distributor and seller of content, which is really MIPS, our headquarters for that. And so we do have a large booth in sort of the main pavilion area. And so we sell content there, both our content and other folks' content that we represent, other producers that we have in our catalog. And we sell our channels business internationally. And so you sort of mentioned how international we are. I think that's maybe what surprises people here, that they know us as our domestic business. They may know some of the brands we discussed before, the Canadian channels. I think probably what they don't know is that we are, with our Love Nature brand, which is our natural history originally commissioned brand, we're in 110 countries with a pay TV channel. With that brand specifically, and that's on the pay TV kind of traditional side. And we can talk about FAST, I'm sure, and kind of what we've done in the FAST space the last number of years. We are now in 70 countries around the world with our FAST brands, and we have a number of them right now. So we can talk about that, but that's been part of our international growth. So we really are global. And that, I'll say, Bill, that was Mike's premise. Like when Mike started Blue Ant 11 years ago, we knew early on that for our growth and success, we could only steal so much market share from the larger Canadian media players. There was only so much we could do here at home. But we started with the premise of, if you own IP, if you have rights to content, then you got to think about the global market, and the global market is the way you can be successful. So we're sort of proudly Canadian and proudly headquartered here because there's so many advantages to being here on the production side, on the talent side, on the location via the US. There's so many great benefits here. But at the same time, we think global, and we've always thought globally about our opportunity. That's been in our DNA from day one.
Yeah, I know that Macmillan always owning the content was a vital part of everything. And I applaud Blue Ant, take my hat off, because as a TV critic, it's been a frustration over the years. I know Bell and Rogers and Chorus, they do make Canadian TV shows. But as a critic, you look at the schedule every September, and it's hard to find them sometimes on prime time in Canada. I always thought this was a bad idea and what do I know? But business-wise, owning the IP, owning the content does seem to be the smart way to go. Sure, it's tantalizing. You live next to the United States. All of that promotion is pouring across the border. You cannot ignore it. But the idea of building franchises and content that are Canadian and selling them seems like the way to do this, the future way. So hats off to Blue Ant for forging ahead, being an example there, I think.
Yeah, well, and for us, it's about, if you own the IP. I mean, I guess I'd say a couple of things, and thank you for the compliment. We'll take it. But I think we think about a few things. One, for the kind of content we play in, and this is, in terms of what we commission for our own channels and how we think about it. As I said, we tend to live in the niches here, and we tend to live in the niches internationally as well. And part of that is because that's kind of in knowing our lanes to live in and where we can compete effectively. And so I say that by saying, we don't today produce premium drama. There's big studios and big international streamers that are playing that game. And that's a very expensive game to commission drama and kind of try to compete at that level.
Absolutely.
And so what we tend to do is produce unscripted content for the most part. And it's in the niches we were talking about. So we're a producer of a lot of history content, science content, lifestyle content, reality competition stuff, stuff that we can afford. It kind of lives at a scale that we can help finance, and that travels really well around the world. And we think about that. We think about that market appeal, and that making sure that whatever we create won't just be successful here at home on our channels here in Canada, which are part of the equation, but that they'll travel and have interest right around the world, either whether we sell them to other broadcasters or we use them ourselves on our own platforms. And that's part of how we think about it.
Give me an example, Jamie. What are the those kinds of shows, the non-scripted, that are selling both home and abroad for you now?
That's actually where the Love Nature channel is probably the best, one of the easy examples. There's so many, Bill, but if I just start with Love Nature, it's funny, you mentioned sort of the difference between renting or licensing content and owning content.
Right.
And so back in 2015, we Love Nature has been a cable channel that's existed for years, about 20 years now, and it launched as a channel called Oasis on the dial. It was kind of in the days when HD channels kind of first launched. It was kind of one of those premium HD channels,
right?
And it was a natural history documentary channel. And early on, it was a channel that licensed content. That's kind of where it got the majority of its stuff from. We bought it from other places. And about 2015. We saw an opportunity because we saw how well that content was doing. And this is when I talk about this. This is us, this is documentary content looking at, shot in all parts of the world, and amazing vistas, aerial stuff, underwater stuff, land stuff, all kinds of wild animals, like all of that kind of real pure natural history content. And what we saw was a couple of things. We saw how compelling that content was. We saw that it traveled well, that there was good demand around the world, that people were looking for that kind of content. And it was a bit evergreen in that we can produce it and it had a long shelf life to it as well. Like once you get an amazing vista, landscape, go to Africa, go wherever, that stuff, the animals have longevity to them from that point of view. They translate well around the world. The languaging is easy because you're just doing documentary dubbing and stuff. The animals translate easy from that side. And the other thing that we saw in 2015 was this is when 4K TVs were just starting to emerge at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty clear to us early on that two things look great in 4K. Sports and nature look the best in 4K. And so we sort of saw a whole bunch of those things coming and said, okay, instead of being a licensor or acquirer of that content, why don't we commission a slate of that every year? We'll do dozens and dozens of hours every year, build a library of original stuff, and then we can use it on our channels, but we can also sell it right around the world to others that might be interested in that content. And so that was Oasis became Love Nature. We rebranded the channel. Mm-hmm. We started to create an annual slate of content. And that was the beginning of us building that kind of international demand, both for the brand Love Nature, but that content that we create. And so just as an example of how we use it, beyond the platforms themselves, we have a partnership with Sky in the UK. Mm-hmm. And so they have a channel called Sky Nature. And Sky Nature is basically all of our content. It's our Love Nature output on an annual basis. And we send it to them and they create the brand in the UK and they put it out under Sky Nature. But it's all of our shows that they're using that live as Love Nature in other places, live as Sky Nature as part of a partnership in that market. So it just shows you the various ways we look at monetizing that content and looking to build partnerships as well right around the world.
And what about in the sports area? Is Blue Ant looking to get more invested in that arena? I know it's a lot of licensing. That's expensive, yeah. But is there opportunities there as well then, if you think that's one of the two big tentpoles?
Well, that's where I go back to knowing your lanes and knowing what your lanes are, Bill. And to be honest, it's just not our lane. I mean, right. Given, and you can see, you sort of mentioned this, sports rights is, especially now, it's a hot topic, and it's a topic that's only going to get more and more expensive and more competitive in the next little while. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting is looking at these giant global streamers who are just dipping their toe more and more into the sports world, right? And you're seeing more and more rights move from the traditional broadcast world. I look at the US where NBA just did a deal, moved away from Warner Brothers, moved to, NBC and Amazon as part of a package they did. And we're seeing that more and more here in Canada. Amazon bought a little bit of NHL rights and they're doing that right.
Monday nights, I think. Yeah.
I think that'll only continue. So anyway, all to say the sports game is a hugely competitive, hugely important game, and a really, as a broadcast platform, as a streaming platform, there's a huge demand for it. It's just not our lane that we're going to be in. So that's kind of where we noted where we can compete and where we can't compete effectively.
It's interesting to see networks, though, smaller ones like the CW are getting more into auto racing or other sports that are not quite as, not the big four, right? But they have a toe in there and they're finding some success. And people, I think, are getting used to looking around at different, now they have to go to Prime or they have to go to Apple to watch baseball or different places now. And I think fast channels, who knows what's happening there. So
Yeah, I mean, that'll come with time. And funny, Roku, who we deal with, they're starting to get into sports. They bought some Major League Baseball rights. They've done some stuff. So even on the fast side, I think that's right. You'll see all those streaming players kind of compete and figure out their take on sports. I think that's only going to continue.
don't go away. Jamie will be right back. Well, the most wonderful time of the year is here, and what better way than to watch a movie or two or specials or other goodies on Paramount Plus Canada. Grab your hot cocoa and dive in with all the holiday cheer of that 1947 favorite, It's a Wonderful Life. Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights, Scrooged, Holly Jolly Homicide, and so much more. Plus, will Santa make it to Bikini Bottom? Kids and the young at heart can enjoy an all-new stop-motion animated SpongeBob SquarePants holiday special, SpongeBob and Sandy's Country Christmas. And nothing says Christmas more than the return of a favorite anti-hero with the highly anticipated prequel Dexter: Original Sin. Christian Slater stars as Dexter's daddy, Harry, and yes, that is original Dexter Michael C. Hall narrating this 10-episode thriller, which premieres December 13th. Take a stab at something different this holiday season when Dexter: Original Sin premieres on Paramount Plus Canada. Well, heat up your candy cane, your hot chocolate, put on your best ugly Christmas sweater, and get cozy. 'Tis the season for Super Channel's annual Heart and Home Christmas Holiday Movie Event, and it's brimming with ho-ho-ho holiday cheer. The merry lineup of festive films has already kicked off and features 21 new movies, including 12 Canadian broadcast premieres and 17 Canadian productions. Making the holiday countdown merry and bright are fan favorites Candace Cameron Bure, Cameron Matheson, Danica McKellar, Jill Wagner, Eric Johnson, Josh Collins, and Oliver Rice. Follow Super Channel Heart and Home's Instagram page for dates and details. And remember, Super Channel is available via most cable providers across the country, as well as streaming via Amazon Prime Video channels and Apple TV Plus, as well as available to stream directly on Super Channel Plus. And we're back. You mentioned that Blue Ant is involved with some fast channels. These are the free ad-supported TV channels. And when we were at CTAM's conference, one of the topics was AI and how that's a tool that could be very, very helpful in terms of targeting advertising in now and in the future, especially with all your niche, the Cottage Life or different things. You could literally sell me, some plumbing help up at the Bruce to, to repair this or that. It can be so targeted. Is that something that you're quite excited about in terms of, because of ad market's been pretty tough for a few years, right? So is this something you see as going to help to open that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things there. I mean, the ad market has been tough just in generally for the past year or two. One of the things we do believe, and we've actually bought a business, we have a Canadian business entirely focused on selling connected TV or AVOD and fast inventory in Canada, is that, ad markets are cyclical, I will say, and they go up and they go down. Yeah. And so it'll go back up again. It's already starting to go back up again in certain areas. And one of the things we believe in is that as it kind of swings back, dollars will move more and more into connected TV, into streaming, into AVOD and fast and those things. And so that's why we know that it's important to be there, not just with our brands, because that's where audiences are growing, but with our ad opportunities as well. And the best part about connected TV is it's sort of the best of both worlds. You get the kind of, big screen impact of TV, primetime stuff on a big screen, but you get the targeting capabilities of digital, which is kind of what you were sort of alluding to. Yeah. And so we're able just that technology, it's all, for years, we always, in cable and in TV, we've talked for years about addressable advertising and kind of cracking that nut, right, on the traditional side. And we never really delivered that. You sort of still ended up with fairly broad advertising against broad demos. And that's always been kind of the way it is in cable and in broadcast. But, the ability to target is already fairly great. And then when you mention AI, it gets smarter for sure, because AI actually has so many applications, I think, in the fast and catch TV space. It does in all parts of our business. And we're right now exploring it in lots of different ways, not just in fast and free streaming, but in production, in marketing, in languaging. Like, there's so many ways throughout our business that AI is going to be helpful and be an amazing tool. And it's getting better and better all the time. But to your point, there's a few things. One, AI technology, there are certainly vendors that are fused in. So if you're looking for a very specific, if you want, let's just say you want all the shows with monkeys, you're a very big monkey fan, and you want to really target channels and content that have monkeys, the technology now, you can find just the shows that I want, just people that love monkeys, and I'll be in all the TV shows with monkeys. Right. You can target to that degree. The hyper targeting of what you can do is going to be amazing when AI kind of really kicks in and scans the metadata and scans the shows and finds what advertisers are looking for. Actually, what's interesting too is right now, if you go on any of these platforms, and I'll say in the US, which is sort of the most developed of the space, it's still actually early days here in Canada in terms of where fast is. Right now, last I checked, Roku here in Canada and Pluto here in Canada, they have 150, maybe 200 channels now. I haven't checked the latest, but it's something around that in terms of their offering here. In the US, those same platforms have 500 channels plus right now. So it's hyper competitive. We operate right now 8 different fast brands in the US in many of the same genres that we talked about. Wow. In terms of our Canadian channel up here. They have different brand names. The Love Nature actually exists down there. But our ghost channel in the free streaming space is called HauntTV. Nice. And we have a true crime channel called Total Crime, which is all awesome true crime stuff. Mm-hmm. We have a lifestyle home and renovation channel called Homeful. We have called like an unscripted history science channel called Declassified. So a lot of the same genres that you and I talked about that our Canadian channels are based on are deliberate cousins. We have cousins in the fast space, and a lot of the same content, back to kind of owning content, windowing content, populates some of those channels. And so in many cases, whether we're producing a show or acquiring a show, fast is mostly library content today. It's mostly older stuff that's going into fast. And in the US, where we have, we're 8 channels of 500, it's amazing that level of competition. So we're sort of going to the AI point I wanted to come back to. Right now, if you go and check on the guide for Pluto or Tubi, you can set your favorites. There's things you can do with it, but you can mostly do just a rolling list of channels, and you literally have to scroll through to find the stuff you want. And imagine scrolling through 500 channels. And as a channel operator, imagine how hard it is to break through when you're 8 of 500. It's not an easy thing to build an audience and to break through and find people that like you. What AI is going to allow us to do is, right now, as opposed to you manually going, okay, I like this channel, let me favorite it. It's going to recognize what you're watching on these platforms. And so just you coming in, Bill, if you're coming in and you're a fan of, pick a genre that you love. You tell me, pick a genre.
The Beatles.
Okay. So, you watch Beatles content, you like even music documentary content. If I kind of took it, I like channels with music docs. Right. Well, it'll recognize that you're watching channels like that. And the next time you come in, those channels will be at the top of the menu. It'll find those for you and serve them for you. So you don't have to scroll 500 times to find the things you like. And if I'm a fan of our ghost and paranormal content or our nature content or whatever, it'll know that I like that content. And so what I see when I come into Tubi or Pluto or Roku or Samsung or whatever, I'll see the channels that I like. You'll see the channels you like. And as a channel operator, I love that because that means the people that like the stuff that I'm serving are going to find it easier than they will right now. And so that's where the technology is going to take us for sure.
It has to, because you're right. I mean, you're competing really against Google and Instagram and everything else, right? If I turn on Instagram and look at it, right away there'll be a Beatle thing or a Muhammad Ali thing. If I walk past a Google Nest in this house and mention we need a barbecue, there's 50 ads for barbecues, it seems. So people are already in that mix, and you can see what's going to happen. And by the way, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was saying, you're absolutely right, and that's where the algorithm. People, to your point, you're used to that kind of algorithm on your social platforms.
Yeah.
You're not used to it on your streaming platforms in the same way, but we're going to get there. And that does, for someone that lives in the niches like me. It's funny, you talk about just when we're in a 500 channel universe. I'm competing against like the history of television is on these platforms now.
It's true
because every amazing comedy, drama, reality show, they're just on channels. And, Blue Ant was an early mover in this space. And when we came on and launched these channels, there wasn't a plethora of stuff on there. But it's only been in the last couple of years that all of the major studios have opened up their catalogs and jumped into FAST. And so today, Warner Brothers in the US has, I think, 75 FAST channels, and NBC Universal has 50 FAST channels. And they're taking, all of their amazing franchises, all the hit shows you and I would know for years, and creating single IP channels or genre-based channels. So I'm not just competing against other crime channels. I'm competing against the Law and Order channel, the Baywatch channel, the Cheer, all that stuff. And so in that list, I need to make sure that I can find the people that love nature or the people that love ghost content.
Right.
And that's where the AI is going to be helpful for sure.
And you're not just competing against, as you say, today's crime shows. You're competing against the Hill Street Blues channel, or going way back. I will watch Route 66 on Tubi or Laugh-In. It is incredible what you can consume. And so you're involved in all of this. I don't know how you keep it straight, Jamie. Hats off to you. But when you're looking at new media partnerships or alliances, and you're looking at new media, like YouTube. We talked a bit about this at CTAM, how effective that is as a place that can point you back to promoting your Blue Ant services, right? Talk a bit about that, just how you at Blue Ant use YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is a hugely important platform. I mean, we know it is probably the biggest the biggest video platform in the world, and the amount of eyeballs, the amount of consumption that happens there, more and more in a connected TV. We thought about YouTube early on in terms of my phone or my laptop, but now so much of their viewership happens on a lean back connected TV. And so for us, it creates so many opportunities. One, it's just a place, it's another distribution platform like all the other ones that we already mentioned. And so we have versions of our FAST channels living as channels on YouTube. We have a Love Nature page and channel. We have a Haunt one. We have a Homeful one. And that's where we put up full episodes of our content in that, because it's another free environment to grab lean back, full episode content or shorts or whatever, and it monetizes incredibly well. So just as a platform to connect with audiences and to monetize that, we use it for all the time. And it's also an amazing marketing platform as well. And we think about it both ways. So you can build an audience there, and you can also promote back to other platforms and other places. And we use it in both, with both things in mind.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. HauntTV, by the way, is that available ghost to ghost? It's an old joke. It's an old joke.
It's a good one. I'm going to use it. I'll copyright it.
Oh my goodness! All right, listen, you've been very generous, Jamie. Just a few quick questions as we wrap up. And thank you very much for walking me through a lot of stuff that I don't know how you keep all these plates spinning, because you're doing it here and or internationally. It's incredible work there at Blue Ant.
Can I just say, we have an amazing team, and we have an amazing team, not just here, but around the world. I mean, that's again, maybe what people don't fully know is while our head office is here and a lot of the team is here, we have offices in LA, in New York, in London, in Singapore, in Australia. And so we have boots on the ground right around the world. And that's actually how we stay connected. Is it's important to have people in those markets so they can see the market trends firsthand and they can hear from the local buyers and figure out what the platforms want. We couldn't do all that from here, for sure. That's where it's important to have a global team and to invest in that as well.
How often are you at an airport?
You know what? A little bit, but I not as bad as some others. I will say there are folks in our business that travel a little more than I do, but I do try to see our teams on a regular basis in different places and meet with partners in major markets and that sort of thing as well. So it's a little bit of that for sure.
I guess you could do a lot of that the way we're doing this, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do this Zoom thing is helpful to a certain degree, but I will say, Bill, there's nothing like seeing people face to face, and I think we learned that after the pandemic, where for folks that have shorthand, you and I have known each other for a while. You can do calls and do a lot of business and figure stuff out, but especially with new partnerships, with meeting new people, there's no substitute to doing that in person. And I think we've seen the value of that. So it's important to have a balance on that.
Is Bluette involved in podcasting at all?
Less so. We do a little bit. Our Cottage Life brand has had a very successful podcast for a couple of seasons now. So we've dabbled there a bit, but not as much as we might want to or aspire to at this point.
So you might be looking for a podcast about talking about television, say, for...
You never know. You never know what opportunities are.
Oh boy. Okay. Anyway, listen, let me just ask a couple of quickies. Sandra here, my wife you've worked with before at Can West and different. She said, make sure you ask Jamie. Jamie loves, like I do, a good diner, a really good diner. Okay. She said, ask Jamie what makes a good diner.
Oh, that's a good one. I like the old style. I like the Formica tables, the kind of I love a good kind of roasty potato. I need a fresh, when I go to diner, Bill, it's for a good fresh breakfast. That's what I look for, actually.
Right.
So I like the old school vibe. I like a booth, all that I like, but it's got to have a great breakfast. That's top of the line for me. It's funny, when I do travel, I try to find new ones in different places. And I live out in Oakville, and we don't have a great one, to be honest, that I could think about. But I do look to find them for sure.
You grew up in Montreal, is that right?
I did. Oh yeah. No, I grew up in Montreal. So yeah.
So what about Beauties? Is that the place in Montreal?
Yes, the Beauties was a good one, but when I grew up, there was one. So I went to school at NDG, and there was one. Oh, it was called Cosmos. Have you ever heard of Cosmos?
No.
Actually,
no.
Okay. So this is a diner. This is literally, and I don't even know if it's there anymore because I haven't been back in a while. But I grew up, and this was a counter, one counter, 12 stools. And there was a Greek man who ran it, who I'm sure has passed now. He was an older guy. And so when I used to go in, and this is going to date me, but like in the 80s and 90s when I was doing that, we would go in. Now, the Greek proprietor was over the grill. He had his eggs and his potatoes and his bacon, and he'd see us come in. Now, I'm pretty sure he had a smoke going over the grill. So he was to kind of really spice it all up.
This is fabulous.
So it was really authentic. But we would go in, and he'd say, "Hey, boys, come sit here. Come sit at the counter." And he'd call us down with my friends. And, "Hey, guys, you want 6 or 8 pieces of bacon? I'll make 8 pieces of bacon. Do you want like extra potatoes? Like whatever." He'd make a big mishmash of stuff.
Wow.
And it was delicious, and I'm sure it took 20 years off my life, but it was really good.
What about, come to Orangeville. I'll take you to Angel's Diner. It's not too bad. So we got to do that one of these days. Now, what are you watching right now? Are you binging a show that you're really into right at this moment?
I am. So right now, I'm going through a Paramount Plus phase right now.
A lot of good stuff. Yeah.
Have you seen Landman with Billy Bob Thornton? And
no, I hear it's fantastic. Yeah.
They've had 3 episodes already. I think it's 3 episodes already. It's great. It's my new show. Billy Bob, it's probably the best role I've seen Billy Bob Thornton in years. It's got Demi Moore in there, who's had like a really minor role so far, and I can't figure out how it's possible that it's Demi Moore and she hasn't really been around that much.
Yeah.
But it's really fun, really great show about the oil sands life in Texas. It's a great little show. It's got like you can see where a Friday Night Lights cousin would come from that a little bit.
Right.
It's got that kind of West Texas vibe to it, but it's great. So that was one I'm watching right now. I am watching a bit of the end of Yellowstone, and it's kind of coming to an end. And then actually, I watched recently. Have you seen The Diplomat on Netflix?
It's tremendous. Season 2 that just passed is 2 or 3. Well, 2, I think. Fantastic. Kerry Russell. Yeah.
I love the way they ended that too. So I'm really keen to see the new.
It's got a very dramatic ending. Yeah, it sets up a third season. We can hardly wait. Rufus Sewell is terrific on that too as the husband. When you were growing up, was there a show you used to race home from school to see? Do you have a favorite from back in the day?
I mean, in the earliest days, I watched Happy Days when I was little, so I really used to race home for that probably in early days, and I loved the Fonz way back when. I'd say I grew up on Cheers. Like Cheers was kind of the show that was kind of through my forming years or whatever. When I watched Cheers right through it, and it's still a show I can go back and watch, and it holds up pretty well actually.
Sure does. Have you seen A Man on the Inside, Ted Danson's new show?
No, I saw it pop up just recently, but have you seen it?
Yeah, it's running now, and you can see it all. It's it's what now the strategy, they're holding them once a week like television, right? But some shows you can still binge all at once, and that's one. And it's certainly interesting. It's not a laugh out loud comedy like Cheers, but no comedy is anymore, right? Things have changed, and Danson's very good in it.
For sure. And have you, by the way, listened to Ted's podcast too? Because
it's fantastic, Jamie. Great, it is, because he's so emotional. He's so connected emotionally, and he's at an age where he's just being himself. He's comfortable in his skin. He's on there with Woody Harrelson. It's called Where Everyone Knows Your Name, and it's a lovely podcast. If you like Ted Danson, you'll hear a whole other voice there. It's really fun. Yeah. Listen, last question. Your all-time favorite TV theme song?
Yeah, I agree. I love it. And we had Kelsey Grammer on recently. That was a great episode.
Yes. Yeah.
I would go with, you hear me okay? I'd go with Cheers as well. I think Where Everyone Knows Your Name is just the banger. So I would just stick with that, I think.
It's a good choice. Yeah. And you're right about Newhart. I binged during the pandemic, we watched all 230 episodes or whatever. And wow, talk about holding up. That's a funny show. For sure. Jamie, thank you so much for your time. Jamie Schouela, Blue Ant Media, and they're everywhere. They're home and abroad. You've got a big job, and you do it well. Thank you so much for explaining a lot of things to me today. Thanks, Jamie. My thanks again to Jamie Schouela at Blue Ant Media. It was great catching up with one of the most likable fellas in the TV business. Kudos as always to Phil Hong for working like an army ant to get this episode delivered on time. See that Blue Ant, Army Ant? Oh, some of these work better than others, Phil. I'm ever grateful to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudre, and all the crispy critters, as well as piano man Stephen Dudley, for the music you hear on this podcast. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you enjoyed this conversation, let us know with a like or a comment on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.